Guys and girls, and welcome to episode 73 of the FReality Podcast. This is a weekly VR, AR, and MR talk show live streamed every Saturday on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitch. You can tune into the show live at 7 p.m. in Europe, 6 p.m. in the UK, and 12 midday in Central US. You can also check out the audio version, which is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Anchor. Thank you again to everyone that helped us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate all your support, and thank you for those of you that have joined us live in the chat today. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback during the show, please put them in the chat. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Now it is time for me to introduce you to the team. First up, let's welcome our new president, not of the US, not of Earth, but our new president of the moon. Is of course Rowdy Guy. How you doing, man? You all right?
I'm all right. I first thought like, ooh, he's gonna say something funny about Germany, but no, it was about me. So.
Oh man.
But you're good.
I'm perfectly fine. Like, you know, it's being president is an awesome thing to do. I have to say, like, yeah. I understand why, you know, some people like to do that.
You look like you was having a good time, but maybe we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So sure. Next up. This guy loves to play with fire, whether that be Firewall or Firezone. You bring the meat, and he'll bring the heat. It's ZimTalk 5.
You're such a master at those intros, Mike. I swear. You should like compile a little book, like, you know, poets compile books, intros by Mike.
Yeah.
From Virtual Reality Oasis. No, I've been good. That was Firezone was a very interesting midweek surprise, and I will definitely delve into more of that. But otherwise, feeling good this week.
Good.
Back and more vibrant than ever.
Good to hear. Looking forward to hearing about that game, Firezone, for sure. Next up, this guy is Germany's biggest export since the Bratwurst. German VR YouTuber, VoodooDE, a.k.a. Thomas. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hi guys, greetings from Germany. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm a little bit nervous because you guys are so professional, and this is really awesome.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Someone said they were professional.
It's all right. You know, you show up here with that many headsets behind you. You know, you've passed the size requirement from my side.
This is only fake. That are no real headsets.
He's using a green screen like I am.
Yeah.
For the audio listeners, VoodooDE, aka Thomas, has got an epic collection of VR headsets behind him on his shelf. He's pretty much got every headset that's ever been released, I think, on that shelf.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that is amazing. So give VoodooDE a warm welcome in the chat. Everyone say hello to him. It's going to be awesome having you on the show this week. Thank you again for joining us. If you're missing our little Frisian friend Nathie, he's on his adventures in China right now. But he'll be back on the show next week with plenty of stories to tell, I'm sure. So make sure you stay tuned for next week's show to hear what he's been up to in Asia. But if you're not aware who I am, well, I'm Mike, host of the show from Virtual Reality Oasis. In today's show, we've got a jam-packed episode for you. We're going to be talking about Voodoo's hands-on experiences with all the latest VR and AR tech from CES. We're going to be talking about the latest VR releases to look forward to next week. We're going to be talking about OpenXR, what is it and why should we support it, and much, much more. But of course, let's find out what everyone's been playing in the metaverse this week and their highlight of the week. And then first up is going to be Rowdy to step up to the plate. Let us know what you've been up to.
Yeah, actually, I mentioned it last week already that I went into like a flight simulator. So I tried out, not according to Zim's recommendation, I tried out Flying Aces, and I kind of have to agree with you. It's not it's definitely not the best flight simulator out there. It feels a little bit skippable, mostly because I don't know why, but I had like some weird audio issues in the game. Like it was like the character that was, you have like some kind of character that keeps on like, you know, debriefing you and like telling you what your next mission is. But I mean, the voice acting is not that good, but there's something wrong with his voice. And if you look at my video, like you really notice it that he starts like low, but by the end of the conversation, he has like this like very high like nasal kind of voice. So it's like sped up, or like the frame rate of the audio doesn't really match the bit rate of the video or something. It's something weird going on, but that did deliver some hilarious content. And also, you know, I'm apparently really terrible at the game, so that also helped a little bit. I crashed so many of them. Like I only put like a few of them in, but you know, taxpayers' money, they say. Like it was.
So like this game, when it first got released, there was some real issues with the video as well. Like there was real strange video effects going on in this game.
I heard from Paradise Decay actually. I don't know if he's present in the chat. He probably knows more about it, because I didn't see that. What I did notice was that the 3D in the debriefing was different from the 3D that I was seeing in the general cockpit. With the 3D in the debriefing, it felt a little bit like too much, like because it did something weird with it, that it like would focus on my hands more than the distance that I was looking at.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the problem we saw. But I do understand that in the cockpit, they patched out the issues that we saw. Now, what they changed, I don't know, but I did see comments. Again, it was an exchange with PD in a chat on a video, I think, where that was exchanged. So maybe it sounds like you got that kind of, you know, post-patch release, but maybe they didn't address it in the intro.
I did notice that in some parts of the plane, it does seem still like 2D textures. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on this at all, so I don't know any specifics. But for me, certain things should be not so thin. I think it looked really weird in a way. Like there was like a break, and the break was like literally like, it looked like a piece of paper that I had to like turn on and off. So it looked a bit weird. But
isn't there like the little yellow orange tab up here, and you're just like
yeah.
And you have to be very specific. You're like pinch it and then pull it back.
I kept on missing it every time I landed. So every time I landed, I like slowed down and then like went on the runway, and at the end of the runway it would be almost still, but then it would like just like roll over and like fall into the ocean.
Yeah. Especially when it's an aircraft carrier, yeah, that's a problem. That's hilarious. So, in terms of this game, like I don't know if you played Ace Combat on the PSVR. You didn't.
No, I haven't.
But would you recommend this one based on your flying experience with this one?
Well, I'm not really like a person who plays a lot of flight simulators, so it's not like I really can compare it. But the things that I have played are better than this one.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not really that big into simulators. But I think there are better ones out there than this one, just in general.
Yeah, I think I got that impression from a lot of people that played it. You know, PD included as well. You know, giving their feedback on it. Said that
I don't think it's bad or something. But I mean, I already don't really like flight simulators. Maybe because I suck at them so hard. But then it didn't really stand out in any other way for me either. So
cool. Have you played this one, VoodooDE?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. You played this one. Did you play this one?
Oh yeah. I was the guy who gave it the big stinking thumbs down, I think, the last time we were talking about it. So yeah, definitely an avoid for me.
Yeah. Well, it came out with some good clips anyway. Like there's a funny one where Rowdy does try and land on the aircraft carrier, puts on the brakes, and then just rolls off the edge, like you said. And it turns out to be a funny clip. So just for the funny content alone, it was worth it, I guess.
The stupid thing was that it was standing still on like the edge, but you could like see it like tipping slowly to the front. And I was like trying to like lean back, but of course it didn't work in virtual reality. So
yeah. Okay. Well, let us know, by the way, everyone that's in the chat, what you played this week as well. And we'll read a few of the games that you played at the end of this little segment. But next up, let's talk to Zim and find out what you played and your highlight of the week this week.
My highlight, I will be talking about Firezone later. So I'm gonna hold that one for now. But I have to say, the thing that surprised me most this week was I dipped back in. I was playing with my green screen mostly this week, and then I played Contractors, and I put on the sub pack, and I had the volume really high up, and holy shit, that was amazing. Like the amount of thud and the connectivity between the game audio, which drives the transducer in the sub pack, and the sub pack in your back. Oh, it was just perfect. Like it may even score like the best marriage between a game title and the sub pack for me over all VR experiences to date. It was that good to the point where I'm like playing it just to feel it, and I'm going through the guns just to feel the different kind of textures through my back. It's amazing, Rowdy.
And is it like on sound based still, or is there already some kind of implementation or like some kind of file that you can like combine it with?
No, it's purely so Subpack is completely off of the baseline essentially, and you have some tweaking ability to filter out certain frequencies, and that's about it. That's all the control you have. There's no software layer involved, and I like that because then it's consistent and it works across kind of all software that has the right bass frequencies involved. Whether it's like the other time that I would say that the sub pack or a butt kicker is just incredible is that sequence in the first like 15-30 minutes of Subnautica where the Aurora, which is the big kind of spaceship, drops down and it goes through this like cataclysmic event, a failure of the main drive warp core, and the ripple and the explosion that comes is it's so cinematically just like mind-watering amazing that literally I have sat down, played through that segment just to get that feeling, and it just lasts about 10 seconds, but it's so gorgeous. So if you do happen to get into tactile stuff, and I'll keep pushing my wares in that space, definitely I'd say Contractors as a recent title, amazing. If you want to feel gunshots, that's just like feels so good. And then Subnautica for that sequence, the explosion sequence is definitely the best explosion you can feel right now.
Having logged more hours into the game now, do you feel like you're improving as well as a player?
Oh God, no. It's the complete opposite. We are now in what I'll call firewall zone, which is game's been out a month. I've locked maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10, maybe less hours playtime. It feels like about 8 hours. And everyone else, if there was a chart, everyone else would be like way up at the top of Everest, and I'd still be, just getting off of sea level. So no, I'm terrible compared to everyone else in that game. They're amazing.
It's one of those things that I do want to keep going back to, and we talked about ProTube last week, and I've got one now. So hopefully next week I'm going to try jumping in with a ProTube and seeing how that works and if it can maybe improve my game. So that'll be an interesting experiment. But let's kick it over to Voodoo then and find out what you've been playing this week and what you thought was worth sharing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I also had a ProTube some months ago, but I was too stupid for that. I don't know. I just sold it again.
Did you get the one with the magnet mounts, or did you get...
No, I had the old one. Okay. But anyway, this week I didn't play so much games because I got this Magimask headset to test. This is this augmented reality thing where you can put your smartphone in, and but it's bad. It's really bad. Nobody needs that. It's too heavy. It's too heavy. It's meant to watch movies, but you can watch like 10 minutes and then your whole face hurts and stuff. So this is.
But augmented reality movie, so it projects the movie on like a wall then or something?
No, it's augmented and virtual reality. Okay. You can So I just tried movies and for the augmented reality apps, this is pretty cool. So we can use stuff like this, the Magic Cube, and watch it through your display of the smartphone. It's really strange, but it works. But it's too heavy. It's so anyway.
And what is it called? What is the headset called again?
It's Magimask. Magimask. I backed it on Kickstarter and just got it now, and I just wanted to try it, but
you don't happen to have it in reach, do you? I always like when we can see these things.
Oh, that was easy.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool.
This one, and you can open it here. Give me a second.
So it looks like it's got a zip at the front. Oh, okay.
The lenses are pretty huge.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of distance. Can you turn to the side? Like, there's quite a bit of distance between your eyes and.
Look
Oh
at
my
this, look
god!
at this.
Wow.
For those who are audio listeners, we see what looks a bit like a scuba mask with a zip front.
That's right.
Where you put your mobile, and but there is some substantial distance. Like the turning momentum there would be very heavy on your face, no doubt.
And also, here's a hole, so we can remove this part, and then you can switch it to augmented reality.
I see. I can understand now why that would be heavy and uncomfortable on your face for a little while.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, what did I
go on.
play?
Yeah.
My favorite game this week was Derail Valley.
Oh, okay.
I
Cool.
know that one.
This is the train simulator that's just I think it released yesterday on Steam as early access, and I'm not a kind of guy that loves trains, so I'm always driving with my car, but I just wanted to try it, and it's amazing. This game is really cool. It's chilling, and you're sitting in your train and putting some knobs and levers and stuff, and I don't really know what I'm doing there because I have no idea how to control a train, but it was really awesome.
I love that concept. I had to break out the stitches there because I love the concept of, like, there's car guys and then there's train guys. I take a train to work,
Yeah.
Which I do, actually.
I've played that one before, actually. I found the most hilarious part of it was that you can get into the trains as well, right? When you're like, you can place them, you can go into the train, but then you can decouple the camera, and then the train keeps on going around, of course, but then you can go and lay on the track, and it looks like the train is going to go and like drive straight over you. So that was pretty a neat experience to have in virtual reality.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we can do some quests like put some wagons of steel from this station to this station and get some money for that, and I was really amazed by that.
Nice. So they've actually added like missions to it now.
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Hang on a second. I just want to check to make sure that Mike and Rowdy aren't confusing this with Rolling Line. Derail Valley is different. So you guys have played this, but some time ago.
Yeah. I played it a long time ago. Yeah,
there was a demo. I played it. I think it was 2017 or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And I was impressed there as well. But now it's even better. They have some issues. They have some performance issues now. They should fix it. But everything else seems to be really nice. I love this game.
Nice. A bit like you said, Zim. If there's any confusion out there, Derail Valley and
Rolling Line.
Rolling Line are two very different games. Rolling Line's more of a place the track out like a model train track, right?
Yeah.
And then you can go and ride it in first person. Whereas Derail Valley is from first person from the beginning. You just basically are a conductor of a train, pretty much.
So I gotta ask Thomas this question: did you manage to derail?
Yes.
Good man.
Yes.
There's a lot of time when that happens. Yeah.
I crashed into a forest straight.
It reminds me of the first time, like, talking about Rowdy, right? He said he's not much of a flight sim guy. I'm not either. But like the first time I ever got my hands on Microsoft Flight Simulator, of course the first thing you do is you try to crash. And the game did this terribly disappointing thing where you're like diving, like, yeah, it's gonna happen. And then just before you hit the ground, literally like inches off the ground, your plane just halts and the game says you crashed with a little pop-up. I'm like, come on, Microsoft. Yeah, it just takes all the fun away.
Yeah. So this week I finally jumped into Resident Evil 7 on the PSVR. I couldn't hold on for any longer because I was holding out for it to come to PC. We was all hoping and praying that would eventually happen, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen now. It's actually been 2 years this week that Resident Evil 7 first came out and was available on the PSVR. So if it hasn't happened in 2 years, it's very unlikely it's going to ever happen. So I finally...
They're going to announce it now like next week or something.
Actually, in my releases news this week, Mike, I'm sorry to say.
Don't you dare. And the thing is, there was a lot of hype, obviously, around Resident Evil this week because the Resident Evil 2 remake had just come out. So I thought it would be a good time, whilst everything was hyped about the series again, that jump in and try it out. Obviously, I'd played the game before in pancake mode, but it'd been 2 years since I played it. And this was obviously the first time I'd played it in VR. And I absolutely loved it. Being in the Baker family house, walking around in the dark and it being very gritty and dirty and very detailed as well, was amazing experience. And
I just have to interrupt you there. I find it hilarious that you go like, it was just like such an amazing experience to be like finally in the Baker house, and like, it was very detailed and everything looked very nice. And I'm like, are you talking about the same house as I was in? Because that place, like, it made me puke like one time almost, like, Jesus, like, oh.
But that's what's so great about it. It's so detailed. And although it is super gross, it's so detailed. And like that first scene of the game where you pick up your girlfriend, Mia, who's basically gone missing for like 3 years. You finally get a message from her and you go investigate the house and you find her. And she basically just turns on you and attacks you with a knife. And that scene in the game, playing it on a monitor, was crazy enough, but playing it in VR, like, that is so intense. That experience, and living it through VR is really actually pretty terrifying. And I was wearing a heart rate sensor at the time that I was playing it, and my heart rate like was shot straight up into the hundreds, like, when that actually happened. But it was a really cool experience. I think the only thing that I felt playing it now, obviously 2 years later after it's been released, is that obviously there's no move support in there, so you don't really have that interactivity with anything in the world with your hands. You just have to use the DualShock 4 controller, which is okay, but it would have been nice to use the move controllers. But it kind of got me thinking that maybe if this game did come to PC now, would people be upset about the fact that maybe it would just be a gamepad game only? Like, would PC players accept that now? I really don't know.
Rowdy that would be Rowdy's first comment.
Yeah, definitely. I've said it before, like, for me, even though it's cool, I don't really see it as a VR game. Like, for me, a VR game needs to have that. I find controllers so important. Like, if it doesn't have controls, unless you're working like some kind of way around that, like Static did, but otherwise, it's not. I mean, it is virtual reality, of course it is, but it's not like the other virtual reality. You have virtual reality and virtual reality.
And I think you feel a little bit less connected to the world around you when that happens. And it's a shame, because in Resident Evil 7, there's some parts where, I can tell you now, because if you haven't played it already, then
spoiler,
too late. But there's parts where you get your hand actually gets cut off. And that would have been really interesting to have that mechanic in a VR game that you have control of your hands in.
I screamed so hard when that happens.
It's so good.
Haptic gloves.
Yeah.
I also remember that I remember PSVR. Frank also played this game, and he like live streamed it from like almost beginning up until the end in like 7 or 8 hours. I don't know. And he was just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Like, he was like not affected by any of the scares that were happening. And after like seeing him like do part of it, I was like, I'm gonna just try it. Literally, I screamed so hard the first time a girl came up me on the stairs.
Yeah.
Do you guys get the same kind of phantom thing? So anytime someone goes after my body in a VR game, I find you get a kind of like a phantom effect of, like, your body's telling you almost like, oh, you have been stabbed, or like there's almost something. It's kind of like a scene out of the old school movie Ghost, where like the guy's like the ghost is like reaching into the body of the other person, like this kind of phantom effect of like you kind of feel something. And I still get that to this day with anything that's stabbing or sawing or cutting.
I don't get that, but my heart rate goes crazy.
There is a neuroscience explanation for that, though. Like, because if you have that very strong connection between your visual system and your tactile system, because you have those tests as well where they like touch your hands very softly, and then they have like another hand which is like plastic. They touch them like both at the same time, and all of a sudden they stab something into that plastic hand. And a lot of people actually feel that initial stab, because you get associated that the more and more like association you get from your brain that is actually your hand. Because how should I explain it? Like, your left and your right hand, they connect in some formal way in your brain. So if both of your hands are touched at the same time, even though one of them is not being touched, it still registers it in your brain as a touch. So the minute that someone like stabs them or something, there's a lot of like amazing movies on that on YouTube. Like, if anyone like after this podcast, you should look it up. It's hilarious to see. Cool. So they do like this psychological test, and they touch both hands, and then they stab in it, and then like people like scream so loud because they actually feel like someone just was about to stab them.
It's like phantom pain.
Some people are a little bit more prone to that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like, I love it when you have your little scientific inputs on this show, Rowdy, because people don't know that you're actually involved in a lot of science in your day-to-day work, right?
You need to play the DLC is all I'm going to say,
You wouldn't
Mike.
believe it looking at him, but he is.
You are going to need to after this conversation go back and play some of the Resident Evil DLC.
Yes, no, I will.
Definitely.
I definitely want to play more. Definitely want to play more. But let us know. Is there anyone in the chat that's played some interesting stuff this week in VR?
Nothing over from.
But yeah, going back was a lot of fun for sure. It was a lot of fun.
Did you find, Mike, because one thing that I believe they patched out, which I had trouble with, and I don't know if Rowdy would be able to comment on this, or Thomas, but when I played it the first time, there were a lot of issues with blackouts. So what I mean is, like, if your character position was getting too close to something else in certain segments, it was this really annoying, like, blackout issue where it would just kill your vision all of a sudden, and then it would come back 5 seconds later. But it was very interrupting to the virtual experience.
Exactly, yeah.
You're the same thing.
Still happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you still have that, Mike.
Yeah, especially in scripted events, it automatically adjusts your, the way you're facing to where the action is happening, basically. Yeah. So
there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit clunky at times,
Yeah.
but still worth it for the overall experience. How far did you get? I'm really curious.
Just up to the point where Jack punches you and says, "Welcome to the family." Yeah.
Oh, so that's still fairly in the beginning.
Yeah,
man.
you're still early.
Yeah. Still very early.
Although I screamed so hard there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like if I just remember, it's like burned in my memory. Like it's like a traumatic experience. What happened there?
Yeah,
I was like, sorry, but no girl is worth all that effort.
Absolutely.
Like. That's what I said. I was like, she's so ungrateful. I traveled all this way to come and rescue her, and now she's just like worried about the family. It's crazy. But yeah, any good suggestions in the chat? What people played?
Anthem and The Fisherman's Tale. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Very nice game.
Yeah. Fisherman's Tale. Yeah, I played that this week as well. Actually, I finished it. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's a shame it's just so short. I think that's my only criticism of that game. But I loved it.
I mean, we talked about this before. Like it's pretty much on the price point as well. I mean, it's not a $60 title, so for like the amount of content you get for the price is actually really good. And still, I prefer half an hour to an hour to 2 hours of good content than like 8 hours of content, of which like 7 hours I'm like, oh, get it over with already.
That's right.
Yeah. But the experience was super polished, right up until the end. The puzzles are fresh. The puzzle design is incredible.
No,
I won't. No spoilers. But definitely, if you haven't checked out Fisherman's Tale, then definitely worth a look. Definitely 100%. But let's move into some quick news then. And first up is some stats from GDC. GDC hasn't even kicked off yet, and if you're not aware of what it is, it's the Game Developers Conference. It's actually coming in March this year, and it's going to be hosted in San Francisco. And this is kind of a place where game developers meet and share ideas, and a place where a lot of new games get announced as well. So it's an exciting time, and definitely one to keep an eye on. But ahead of the show, a lot of devs were invited to fill out a survey, and part of the survey was aimed at devs that are developing for VR platforms. And they were asked specifically about which platforms they're currently developing for. And we've got some really interesting stats that came out as a result of it. So what I'll do is I'll work my way from the bottom to the top. So from the least developed for to the most developed for. So at 6% is the Google Daydream. So 6% of the devs said that they're working on this. Next at 8% was HoloLens. After that, 8% again was Magic Leap. So some AR there at the beginning.
Yeah, fair enough.
10% was the Gear VR. 11% was the Oculus Go.
Who else has forgotten the Gear VR exists? Sorry.
Yeah.
I still thought it would beat the Oculus Go in a way.
Really?
Well, it's still, if you're developing for Oculus Go, you're pretty much developing for Gear VR at the same time anyway. So I guess both the developers just tick those boxes both if they're working on those. Next up at 13%, you've got PSVR, which I think is actually surprisingly low. I thought it was going to be more than that.
Yeah.
Next, a big
although no, in a way it does make sense because I think the criteria are so much harder to develop for the platform.
That is
so
true. We do
probably
know
the money that needs to get invested is way higher, since they don't have like, I mean, if you look at like Steam or like the Oculus Store, a lot of the titles that are on there are also like a little bit like,
Crap.
you don't see those titles on PSVR.
That's true. They've got a certain quality barrier for sure.
But
and
then
we
you
know
miss
that
out on
with
classics,
as
right?
well.
Like Tower of Pizza.
Temple of Pizza.
Temple of Pizza.
Get it right.
Whatever it was called, I don't know.
Did you even play it?
Did you play it? Everyone played that
I
game.
should. I really should, but.
But we digress. So the big jump here from 13% of the PSVR is 21% for the Oculus Quest, which is great news for the Quest. Obviously,
wow.
we know that everyone's been kind of quiet, at the moment for like PC titles. So it seems that everyone is developing for the Quest, which is great to hear. Next after that, 30% are developing for Oculus Rift, then 33% for HTC Vive, and then 42% are developing on other platforms. So yeah, the Magic Mask, exactly, the number one headset. But it was kind of interesting because 42% are developing for potentially unannounced hardware. So this could be something like the Vive Cosmos, or it could be something like the unannounced headset from Valve. We just don't know, but it just seems such a big number.
Yeah, how does that make
developers? It's really strange.
That's 2 out of every 5.
Weird. Yeah, exactly. So they're not aiming at the current market, but at a future market then.
Yeah. So it seems like they're going like you said, aiming for the next gen rather than current gen. But it's good to see that the Quest is highly represented in there. It's good news for people that are holding out for that release, and a lot of people are pinning all their hopes and dreams on VR going mainstream on that headset. Whether that will happen or not, we don't know. I hope it does, but it's I don't know yet. But it's great to see this huge support really early on for this headset.
It's really interesting
Maybe
because
they all mean the Steam VR knuckles.
Maybe
like those 40 odd percent. I mean, it's probably a mixture of 2 camps, right? So future headsets unannounced and all the junk headsets that people are trying to potentially develop for to own that market. Like, I mean, if you wanted to develop on Pico Neo, for instance, you might be saying, I'm going to be the best app on that system because I have one, I have a dev kit, and I'm just going to do that. But I got to imagine off of those stats, Mike, that the numbers are saying what you're saying. In other words, there's a substantial proportion in that 15 to 20% that are dedicated to a headset that we don't know about yet.
Exactly.
Maybe it was the Pico Neo VR conference.
But yeah, that is certainly interesting, and I'm sure we'll get more news throughout this year on what's coming soon. I don't think I think we should find out, hopefully, fingers crossed, by the end of the year, what's going to be the next Rift. We already know what HTC's plan is, and hopefully some news from Valve as well. I really hope that happens.
In the chat, Gary Haylock has said maybe it's the PSVR 2.
I would love that. I would love a PSVR 2.
That's a good point.
I don't think so. This next year, perhaps. Or
Next year?
2021. I don't think
Really?
this year.
Yeah. It's a shame because I think, having played with the PSVR a lot just recently, Borderlands 2, not so much with Ace Combat because it was a seated game anyway, but also Resident Evil as well. Having a room scale PSVR is really the biggest addition that I would want. Even if it could just do room scale and still have the same resolution and same headset design and everything else, I would be happy with that.
It's just that the content is so good.
Yeah,
the content
exactly.
is so good on the platform.
And regular, and regular. Like the amount of game releases that we see on PSVR that are of a decent quality. It's less regular than, like, say, what the Steam store gets. But for every 10 of the scrappy games that you get on Steam, the things you actually want to play or would be interested in the last 6 months have mostly been on PSVR.
That's right.
It's interesting, really, because there's still a lot of ignorance out there, I think, from people about the PSVR. And I have to admit, to a certain degree, I was one of those people before I got one myself, kind of thinking that it was just like a watered down version of what I already used to. But it does stack up with Rift in terms of visuals inside the headset. The clarity is very good, and visually the games inside the headset look great. Although I admit it's got limitations in tracking, everything else about it is great. And I think people made comments on my Ace Combat video saying, "Oh, I must look really blurry in the headset," but they just don't understand that actually it's a really standout headset when it comes to visuals. Yeah, looks really great.
Better. And it's people can say what they want, but it's real VR. Like I've had like the most amazing virtual reality experiences on the PSVR, and not because of like the immense clarity of the screen, but just because of the polishment of the experiences.
The fluidity of the frame rate is probably number one for me, and for enjoyment both for myself and a viewing audience, even if the resolution is a bit less, just not having a broken frame rate at all. It doesn't stutter, it doesn't, and that's part of the high requirements in the QA that games have to go through on the platform as well. So it really talks volumes for quality standards and why quality standards matter. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into the next bit of quick news this week, and that is a Predator game is coming to VR. And we had some news from a confidential informant that a Predator game is coming to virtual reality. And I can hear you all now in the chat screaming, yeah, whatever, Mike, you said this about aliens.
I was just about to say that.
Alien Blackout came out on mobile, and I'm not going to trust you again with your fake news. But to be fair, I share your pain. I was super disappointed too about Alien Blackout. So apologies if I got you excited about that. I got myself excited about it as well and let myself down. So apologies. But this time, however, we've got some information from someone who I would say is a reliable source of information. And to back that reliable source of information up, there is actually a listing on SteamDB for Predator VR that is actually being regularly worked on. And even today, there was an update pushed to the build that obviously isn't released yet. So this game is definitely being worked on behind the scenes. And it seems like it's a separate game from an arcade experience that is being developed as well and coming to VR arcades at some point this year. So it looks like it's going to be a PC game that we can play, but we don't know any more details than that. But it kind of got me thinking about a Predator game that I would like to play, and especially if you got to play as the Predator itself, because being empowered as a player in VR is really a magical experience.
Right.
That feeling of being a badass. And he's got such an amazing arsenal of weaponry at his disposal that it would be so awesome to play as that character in virtual reality. I thought I'd pass it over to you guys to see what you guys would think of something.
Yeah,
like
I was
that.
thinking the same, because a lot of the things, they're often like gaze control and those kind of things, like like the way that he aims and the way that he like tries to track. Often that is done with like the hat kind of thing. So I think that would fit really well in virtual reality. So yeah, that would make me excited about it.
Well, just before launching, Mike was slagging off anybody who didn't know what Predator was all about, and I have to admit now, Mike, I've never seen the films, any of them, and so
me as well. Also not.
although I'm a big, look at that, that's 2 out of 4 of us. So thank you, Mike. But I know so little about Predator other than he's got kind of a funny panel on his arm. He goes bloop, 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 and then like people die. That's about all I know. And the fact that we've got our lovely German correspondent here today, I thought was perfect for an earlier comment about matchmaking between these two, because I think his other favorite dude, right, Predator, was Arnie. So there you
go. Wait, before that, VoodooDE, before you start talking about Predator, can you one time say get to the chopper?
Get to the what?
The chopper.
It's the tagline. It's basically get to the helicopter. So get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper? What is wrong with that?
That was like the nerdiest German way of saying that. I love it. We need to clip that, make it my new mobile phone ringtone.
Now you need to watch the first movie, and you understand why me and Mike are
You guys need to do some homework, and you need to go and just watch that movie.
I think we should.
Show. It's such an iconic movie. Like the original is amazing.
Can I borrow your new headset, Thomas, just to watch the film?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Rowdy. Having access to the abilities that the Predator has, like heat vision, and having that melee weapon, which is like a badass curved blade, and being able to rip people's spines out in VR just would be so epic. So, hopefully we'll get something that's worthy of a Predator name.
I was just going to say, I despite having never seen the film, I did play Alien vs. Predator 2 a lot, and that game is you can play as a predator, alien, or human, and there's like 3 different campaigns and stuff. So I know a little bit, but you were asking, what would make a successful game. I don't know if ripping people's spines out is necessarily what I would choose there, although that it sounds like a thing that Zim would enjoy. I think that the vision side, they'd have to really refine, though. Like what Rowdy was talking about, all that gaze-based control stuff, generally drives me batty. Like I really don't like it when you're running in a VR game and you turn your head to the left and your character follows that path. I generally like.
Oh, no, not like that, of course. But I mean, for the aiming, they have like like heat seeking and like these kind of like triangles that try to like aim, and you need to like look at a certain point long enough before like it locks on. Yeah. That would be awesome to do, I think, with like the Predator mask, because he's wearing a mask.
So giving you a kind of a sense of power and being able to annihilate your foes by looking at them.
A secondary weapon for him. So it's not like the primary weapon. It's like a secondary one that you'd use as a power up or something like that.
What was his primary? What was his primary weapon?
Well, he's got some claws that are pretty badass.
Okay,
so,
the old Wolverine trick. Got it.
Watch the movies.
Watch the movies.
I will.
I'm more of the Alien fan. I'm just watching the Alien films and movies. Oh, this week I also played Alien Isolation with the new Mother VR update.
Nice.
With the Pimax, and this is really frightening. Holy shit! Oh man.
Finally putting that like huge field of view to use, like.
Yeah. Have you tried hiding in a locker from it yet?
Yeah, sure.
Because it actually picks up audio from your microphone. So if you say anything or scream or anything, it will know you're in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Such amazing mechanic in a game.
You know what? To be honest, like a wide field of view headset like Pimax, hiding under a hospital bed, the hospital gurneys, I think that would be absolutely terrifying, because the extra field of view, you'd be able to see it moving even if you weren't looking straight at it. You know what I mean? And like sometimes that gets you even more scared than looking straight at the thing that's hunting you. Yeah. So
by the way, in the chat, if you've got any questions about the Pimax, we're going to be taking questions for Voodoo at the end of the show. So if you've got any burning questions about Pimax or any of the other headsets he tried at CES, which he pretty much tried them all, save them to the end, and we'll have a little Q&A session with him at the end.
Also, since you mentioned that it picks up the audio, I think that's a neat little thing that VR headsets have, because pretty much every VR headset has a microphone built in. Exactly. And you see more and more games actually taking advantage of that. I forgot the name of the game, but it was the one that was made by the developers from Metro. Do you know what game it was? That was in the
Artica 1?
Artica 1. There they used the microphone in like the very cold areas to blow like little like fluffs of air, like water vapor out of your mouth every time that you were speaking. That is such a nice way of like adding immersion to games like that, just by using simple technology that is available on all of the VR headsets that it's developed for. Yeah, so I really like things like that, because it really adds to the immersion in a simple way.
They did the same thing with Poker VR. They implemented these. They had some kind of items you could buy with kind of in-game freebie currency or whatever, and you could get a cigar lighted up, and in the same thing. So like as you breathe or whatever, you're getting the smoke out. It really makes you feel like you're a dude with his whiskey and a cigar. It felt just so freaking amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've not tried that game yet, but I want to try it out. So let's move into a final bit of quick news this week, and that is Leap Motion's Project Northstar. For those that weren't around and didn't sort of tune into the show regularly, we talked about this about 6 months ago when it was first announced. But if you're not aware, I'll give you a quick recap. Leap Motion is a company that's it's not to be confused with Magic Leap, by the way. It's kind of confusing because they're both in the augmented reality space, but they're different companies. Leap Motion basically developed a hand tracking module, which was released back in the Oculus DK1 days. A lot of people who was sort of like on the curve picked them up, including myself, and we kind of played around with some demos and some hand tracking implemented games like Alt Space and VR Chat, and had a lot of fun with it. But it doesn't really seem like it's been implemented in much since then, so it's a bit of a shame. But interestingly, about 6 months ago, Leap Motion announced Project Northstar, which is an open source AR headset utilizing the Leap Motion module for hand tracking. And this headset is basically built by 3D printing the components yourself and putting it together using basically off-the-shelf parts that you can buy, and you can assemble it yourself and basically start developing for this headset and developing AR applications, which is really cool. And I actually bought a 3D printer myself for this very reason, because I'm planning to build one. And actually, my lenses came through yesterday. I can show you them on camera, because you can make these yourself, but basically you're better off just buying them.
Wow.
And make them yourself.
Interesting shape.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
For audio listeners, those are like they're almost rectangular in shape.
Yeah. But basically,
they're like ski glasses broken in two.
Yeah, ski glasses.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And what they are is they're opaque but mirrored. So it's designed so that the display panels are mounted behind your eyes and they reflect the light onto the lenses, which then reflect obviously back into your eyes. And the cool thing about this headset is like not only the fact that it's open source and really cheap and easy to put together yourself, is that, you know, compare it to the way more expensive headsets from Magic Leap and HoloLens. The field of view on these headsets from Project Northstar is 100 degrees, which is comparable to what we're used to in VR right now with the VR headsets. Yeah. Whereas with Magic Leap and HoloLens, it's around 40 to 50 degrees field of view, so it's very limiting.
How does it work for like screen door effect and all these kind of things if it's like with the mirror? How does that work?
So basically, what it does is you're using, I think it's two 1440 by 1440 panels at 120 hertz. So it runs higher refresh rate than a VR headset does. But I think those particular panels and the video drivers are quite hard to get hold of. But there is a really cool community member who actually got these lenses sourced and manufactured for everyone. I'll just get his name, Noah Zirkin. So shout out to him. He's a really cool community member that's really helping the community build these headsets. He's a developer himself. But yeah, you know, from what I've seen in terms of videos, like behind the lenses, video capture of people using these, it looks super crisp and clear. You know, the actual tracking of the hands.
I'm wondering, like, what is the? Because I mean, there must be advantages and disadvantages. Like, do you have any like of the effects that you see with the, for example, the Vive, like those rings or like the glare or all of those things?
It would be really interesting because I've never tried it, so I really can't tell. But like, I plan on building one and maybe doing like a small video series on how I built it once I've got it up and running, to help people out, 3D printing the parts and sourcing the components as well. So once I've got some hands-on time with it, I'll definitely report back and maybe do a segment on the show talking about it. But yeah, I would definitely like to share that.
I see that the chat is interested as well, because I see Tom Mahady already asking, please post a link where we can order those lenses. We'll probably do that after the podcast, just in the description box, so that people can find it over there.
If you're a developer or you're a tinkerer and you're interested in building your own Project Northstar headset, I would head over to the Project Northstar Discord, which is linked from the Leap Motion website. There's a community there of people that are all helping each other out because they're all sort of paving the way basically and testing things out for each other. Join that and the forums and you'll find out a lot of help there. And Noah Zirkin, who made these lenses, also posts in the Discord regularly. He's a sort of highly regarded community member there. So definitely if you're interested, go and check it out. But I think it's really cool that especially if you're a developer and you can't afford the thousands of US dollars it's going to cost for a Magic Leap or a HoloLens, you can piece this together yourself and start developing some really cool augmented reality applications right away, you know.
What is the kind of cost of outlay, Mike? Because you said it was relatively inexpensive, but what are we talking?
So 3D components are, you know, very cheap once you own a printer. You know, my printer cost me £200. These lenses were £40 to get imported. The thing, it's way better to import these lenses because applying this mirrored film to a clear, curved surface is going to be very tricky to get right. So I would say just order these. In terms of the displays, you can use Raspberry Pi displays, a lower refresh rate and a lower resolution, which are cheaper, obviously. But the higher resolution ones, which are the ones you really want, are a little bit harder to source. But again, the community are rallying together and doing a big bulk buy together. So if you're interested, that's the way to do it.
So like $300-400?
£300-400, I would say, is probably about right. Okay. And the reason why I sort of brought it up again is because Leap Motion have recently pushed a big update to this design. They're actually on revision 3 now, and they've made the headset way more comfortable in terms of its design, in terms of you've got all the pressure sitting on your forehead now rather than your cheeks, and the lenses are much further away from your eyes to accommodate glasses now as well. So they're really sort of working on this a lot behind the scenes, and the fact that it's open source is just so incredible.
Can you hold those lenses up again just to show us again? And so maybe just model them against your face.
They're wrapped in film right now.
Look at how cool he looks, guys.
You end up looking like some sort of like insect, but it is very, very cool indeed. But these are plastic wrapped because I haven't taken them out yet, but to protect them. But they're very cool indeed. So looking forward to putting that together in the future. But I thought it was an interesting one to share.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's all the quick news we've got this week. So let's maybe pass it over to Zim and find out what game releases are coming next week and what we should be looking forward to.
Hey, there you go. So this is going to be this is going to be quicker than normal because we've kind of touched on some of the stuff that I'm mentioning. Really, two of the titles are things that have just released in the last couple of days. Third one's coming out soon on PSVR, so I'll cover these three things. First one, which we touched on a little bit earlier, is Firezone, which is an Oculus Go title. So if you happen to own an Oculus Go or thinking, maybe I'll get an Oculus Go, but I don't know if it's got the content that I want, then this game is one to look out for. Really was a surprise to me. This is a kind of a fast-paced, classic Counter-Strike style, online shooter. It's multiplayer. There are both online and offline modes with bots. So although the developer has kind of hammered through, I think, 3 titles in the last year, this one, in terms of its basic, core functionality and just how it's operating, I was very surprised. Solid netcode. There was no players jumping around or anything like that. Bots obviously working. And the best part about the whole thing is there's very few online multiplayer games that are that support VoIP. That's clear.
Yeah.
And for this, it was literally it was either 8-player deathmatch, 4v4. I don't know if the game can go beyond that point. But I jumped in with, and I'll give a quick shout out here to YouTuber Raw Marcus, who does a whole bunch of Oculus Go content and is really the kind of go-to guy for that stuff. But he put up a session with his community, and literally for a couple of bucks, this thing is only, I think it's about £3 or kind of $4 or something like that. Well worth getting into. Now there are problems with it because the sounds in the game clearly need some leveling, some balancing. There's more options needed in terms of being able to control certain things that you see in the game. But the fact that it's all working kind of out of the box in its kind of alpha state is fantastic. I can't think of another game aside from
VR headset,
what's that?
I found that crazy.
Yeah.
On a mobile VR headset, I find something like that indeed crazy.
And the best part about this that I would say from my personal experience, I'm a big FPS fan, have been for donkey's years. It really felt like I was playing early alpha Counter-Strike because it wasn't just I was expecting something where you'd be limited because of the fact you're on a 3DoF controller, that you'd be limited in terms of looking up, looking down, or aiming, that kind of thing. But no, I was able, these multi-tiered levels to get up top with a sniper rifle, taking people out, hop down. Actually strategy there and strafing and all that. He actually made it so you either walk forward or you're strafing. And a combination of those things, along with reloading the weapons, different weapon choices, weapons that can unlock, and a variety of different game modes. For a couple of bucks, you have to. It's one of those games that I would say if you're into FPSs at all, absolutely try it. So
yeah, I just want to sort of highlight the VoIP. It's such a big deal, we haven't seen many multiplayer Oculus Go games that incorporate VoIP, and I think it's one of the strongest parts of this headset because having experienced how clear the VoIP can be in Oculus Rims, for example, it was crystal clear. The audio was so good on this headset for something that's so cheap.
It's like someone is standing next to you.
Exactly.
That's how it feels.
Exactly.
It feels like someone is standing next to you.
I don't know if he brought in as well positional audio, because for anyone who's ever experienced positional audio in an FPS, it makes such a difference to be able to hear someone being, especially a teammate behind you to your left or right. One of the other things that I would say that the developer no doubt has on his pipeline is being able to mute players who may, because it is default open VoIP. So for anyone who's been in an environment with a noisy player, at the moment it's a little bit of a letdown because you get into the server and it's a bit okay, well, I got 2 options here. Either I can leave and go find another group of people to play with, or I can just kind of grit my teeth and bear it. And again, some of the gun sounds in the game you're going to find to be overbearing at the moment. But it was a blast, to be honest. It was a real blast.
That's a really good point, actually. If you're ever playing an online shooter, don't be that jerk that plays the radio or music in the background. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, or has someone else entertaining themselves in the background, in an apartment complex, and there's an episode of Seinfeld on. Not good for content creators. So I don't know if did any of you guys get a chance to play that or?
No, it wasn't on my list though. I did see it and I thought it did look good.
Yeah, give it a blast. Give it a blast. All right. I'm shortly going to be on a trip out in Canada, so I'm going to be giving this game a shot from kind of quite afar and see if I can get into some multiplayer matches people across the world. But so I'm very thankful that the developer released it at this time, because it's always good to have games on the go. The next one I was going to mention, which we obviously Thomas already covered in some detail, was Derail Valley. I'll just give some kind of visuals of that one as well, so people get a flavor for that. So we already talked about it in quite a bit of depth, but I figured giving people a flavor of how the game looks and give them some details about that would be good as well. So Derail Valley just launched there just yesterday, so 25th of January. It's available for $20 and US dollars and varying euro and GBP prices. As we covered already, it's an immersive train simulator. Differs quite a bit from Rolling Line, which we've covered before on the podcast. And I do think that I'll call it the Euro Truck Simulator style of A to B missions, I found to be quite attractive. And one of the things that I would say about that is, if you've ever looked at a VR game before and been surprised that, oh, hang on a second, that was way more fun than I thought it would be. That's what I'm hearing from you, Thomas, in terms of your feedback on this game. Yeah, like you look at it and you go, that's going to be boring as hell, right? Play a game like that.
Yeah, I really thought that as well. But finally, it's really good. It's chilling, and it's not another wave shooter. So, it was amazing.
Was this developer so smart to add dinosaurs to this game? Or
perhaps, yeah.
Not yet.
This is the same sort of feeling I got when I played Wrench for the first time. It seems like a really mundane thing to do, like piece to piece an engine together, but actually it was just so satisfying and really rewarding. And I guess this is the same thing in that sense.
Yeah, and to be honest, when the derailing comes up on the video, for those audio listeners, I'm sorry you're going to miss out, because that is the best look. The physics in this game are really, really satisfying in terms of seeing trains.
All of a sudden, like, it turns into a horror game.
Oh yeah, someone could reclip that way. So speaking of horror, I thought I'd give us a couple of fun statistics. All right, and this is the good old European versus US battle about train derailment. So I just mixed a little bit stir that into the pot this week. So in Europe, and if any of you do take the train to work like me, I'm sorry, this is gonna maybe make you think about this the next time you get on board a train. So in 2016, which is the latest round of European statistics, 1,787, so that's nearly 1,800 significant railway accidents were reported. And of that, 964 people were killed in that year. I was like, that's a pretty high freaking number for trains when you think, geez, what is this? And that doesn't include suicides on the railway. So railway-related accidents, this isn't just specifically derailing. This is all kinds of things. You park your car, at a level crossing, all that kind of stuff. But nearly 1,000 cases. And I was like, okay, come on, Europe. Surely the US has us beat there, because they're always worse on death statistics. So the US, surprisingly, have a statistic, except for theirs was, I think theirs is mixed. And they had in 2017, so the year after, 864 rail fatalities. And so it does look from stats that Europe, we are slightly beating the US at train-related fatalities.
You know why?
Why is that?
More people use public transport in Europe than they do in the US.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, that's right.
There are very, there are large kind of long transit train lines, but I think you're spot on it, Mike. So there you go. There's your there was the suicide statistic here, which is crazy as well. It says suicide. This is the European one. Suicides occurring on the railways reported separately was 2,870 cases in 2016. So for anyone who's ever dealt with kind of metro or rail, at least you have a flavor for the number now. And if you're watching Voodoo's video, which I did a bit earlier, you can think about those grim statistics as you're enjoying the comedy as well.
Wow.
One more. So we've got a final title from me this week, and this is going to be Anyone's Diary, which is launching on PSVR shortly. That's coming out on the 31st of January. So I'll give you a little bit of information on this one. Particularly if you're watching, I think you'll find the visual style very interesting. As to me, the visuals look a lot like Little Big Planet in terms of this kind of cardboard cutout view. So Anyone's Diary is this is a bit of an odd game. It's a third-person puzzle platformer. Players will discover the story of anyone, that's the character's name, without any identity, gender, or age. You can tell what year this has been released, right? And help them to get through a distorted city made of paper, solving inner conflicts represented by puzzles. So it's essentially a puzzle game and a platformer at the same time. And this is the interesting thing I mentioned last week. So PlayStation Talent's 2017 awards, where this game received 3 nominations for Best Art, Best Game for the Press, and Best Use of Platforms. And thanks to the nominations, the team entered into the PlayStation Talent's Games Camp for further development and to bring their ideas to market. So I actually found that to be a real, and again, another one of these kind of indie flowers that takes off, buds, and gets some support, obviously from Sony through this program. I hadn't heard of this before. I hadn't heard of the Talents Game Camp, but obviously, if you're a budding developer, and no doubt we've got a large series of those amongst our listeners, these programs and inlets, could be the successful road for you. So look them up, see what the entry criteria are for, and get dreaming.
Yeah, same with game jams as well. A lot of VR games seem to stem from a game jam session. So, was it Pixel Ripped did?
Exactly.
It was a game jam game.
There's a big game jam about to kick off as well. I think one of the I just saw it. Steam was broadcasting it actually shortly before we went live. So, anyway, those things happen throughout the year in all kinds of places. But those were our 3 games for this week. So just to recap, that was awesome. Firezone, Derail Valley, and Anyone's Diary. There you go. Awesome. Back to you, Mike. Or should I say, Mr. Jobs? You look a bit like Steve Jobs today.
Oh man, that guy was a legend. So let's talk about OpenXR, because over the last few months of the show, we've been talking a lot about new hardware, new VR headsets, and it seemed like every week we was talking about a new VR headset. And I think, new hardware is great, but the problem is, like with new hardware, it causes confusion with consumers who aren't necessarily as involved in the industry as much as we are. And it's a real headache for developers because they have multiple platforms, multiple headsets to develop for, and none of them sort of work, together side by side. So they have to develop for each one individually, which is kind of a pain. And that's where OpenXR comes in. And this is previously known as the Kronos VR initiative. It's now been sort of shortened down to OpenXR, which is a bit more catchy. And it's been established by the Kronos Group, who in partnership created industry standards for traditional 3D graphics, such as Vulkan, OpenGL, WebGL, those kind of platforms. So they're well established within the industry. And now their goal is to create an open and royalty-free standard across VR and AR applications and devices, which is really interesting. And they plan to do this by having a single API that developers can design their application around. And then this API can run on any hardware that's signed up to the initiative without the developer having to develop for each platform individually. So, right now we've got different headsets with different resolutions, different fields of view, different controller inputs, different tracking methods, and none of them work together. So, like Rift and Vive, for example, there's nothing about those two systems that work together. So that's why if you find, a game that's been developed for the Vive, the controller inputs don't, translate over well to using it on the Rift and vice versa. So this is what, this kind of like OpenXR API is trying to resolve. And they recently showed this off working in a demo of the Epic Showdown demo, which was shown way back in the day. But using the OpenXR API, they were able to get this demo working on a Windows mixed reality headset alongside a Star VR headset, which are both 2 very different ecosystems, without changing anything to the original demo's code and just using this OpenXR API. So this is kind of exciting, really, because all you need to do as a developer now is just develop using this OpenXR API, and you can run it on a magnitude of different headsets and hardware, which is really cool. And this is including controller support as well. And like I mentioned about the mapping of controller inputs, using this OpenXR API, it now takes a list of actions from the game and correlates them to input methods from the controllers and matches them together automatically. So you don't even have to configure it. And this means that controllers far into the future could be backwards compatible with games that are available right now, which is also really cool.
I agree that is a cool thing, but I find it actually cooler for controllers now, because I think at a certain point, we'll get to like the ultimate controller or something that works perfect for virtual. Because I mean, ultimately, you want this in virtual reality. So once we're able to do this, then I would assume that you would still have different brands making those kind of controllers, but that the controllers will largely kind of align. So I find it more exciting for controllers now than for controllers in the future.
But I think OpenXR will play a big part in like Knuckles and those kind of controllers that are being developed right now. But also it means that in the future, and we've mentioned this on the show before, is that you can have the best of everything. So you can have the best tracking system, you can have the best headset, the best haptic suit, the best controllers, and they might all be from different brands. And that's the really exciting thing about piecemealing your ultimate setup, I think, in the future.
You've watched Ready Player One a bit too much.
You guys talking about this have even turned me on to the whole concept of, how NVIDIA has taken this whole concept of kind of the neural networking and obviously the intelligence that you can build onto a chipset now. If you applied that to controller schemes where people have whatever controller they want, interfacing with whatever game, you could actually have a system built where it would try to automatically adapt to whatever you wanted to be controlling with that through your actions, automatically mapping those buttons, the layout. So you don't have to remember anything. Like literally it would just, whatever you're attempting to do, it realizes, oh, that's the pattern of inputs, a human in a similar place. And I don't know, Peru did the same thing. So let's use his configuration and boom, straight away, so that's just kind of an exciting idea of having a dynamic controller set driven by.
That's so cool about the Steam controller, since they allowed like different user inputs based on like the style of playing. So if you said like, oh, I'm someone who uses like a lot of first-person shooters, then you can play those first-person shooters with certain configs that have been made by people that play a lot of first-person shooters. So it is a concept that is being like used more and more in like different kind of styles and different kind of games and different kind of brands. So I do see something like that happen in the fairly near future.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see. And this platform is another step in that direction, clearly.
Absolutely, because this is great for developers because their games can be sold on numerous different platforms with not having to develop individually for each platform. It's great for hardware manufacturers because they have a bigger library of games from all these developers straight off the bat if they sign up to this initiative. And it's great for consumers because we get a broader choice of games and a variety of different hardware we can choose from. So it's not like, a bit like Oculus right now, it's closed ecosystem. We can have open ecosystems that span all different hardware, which is super exciting. And the thing is, this sort of collaboration, this OpenXR ethos, it has members from industry leaders, across the globe, such as Epic Games, Intel, Oculus, HTC, Google, Samsung, Microsoft, Magic Leap, NVIDIA, and Valve, just to name a few. And it's interesting. Go on, Rowdy.
And Zim.
And Zim, yeah, and us. We back this now.
I'm finding it.
Officially endorsed by the FReality Podcast. But we've got some really cool quotes here from a couple of leaders from the industry. Yeah. First up is John Carmack, obviously CTO from Oculus. He said, "Open APIs have been immensely valuable to the industry, balancing the forces of differentiation and innovation against gratuitous vendor incompatibility. As virtual reality matures and the essential capabilities become clear in practice, a cooperatively developed open standard API is a natural and important milestone, and Oculus is happy to contribute to this effort."
Sounds like John, all right.
Next up, we've got another legend giving his input on OpenXR as well, and that is Gabe Newell from Valve.
He talks? Sorry.
Sorry.
I never hear from the guy, so anyway.
He says, "The number of VR systems on the market is growing rapidly. Most of these require separate API support from the developer, which is causing huge fragmentation for consumers. The work on a standard API to enable applications to target a wide variety of VR devices is an important step to counter that trend." So I think overall, I think OpenXR sounds great. It's a really exciting sign that the industry is collaborating and working together on a standard. And it seems that, this will be a big part of VR taking the next big step in becoming more popular and more mainstream and widely adopted by consumers.
It does seem like a uniform advantage across all market competitors. I don't see anything against it per se, except for maybe time to market and a competitive factor of saying, I'm going to develop my ecosystem, just like the console wars, right? Like, here's my little package for developer. It's super easy to have this, because while this is still in an unrefined state, you get into the annoyance of version control. Just like with the headset you just talked about, Mike, 3D printing off, right? Like, you don't want to be chasing moving goalposts in terms of the configuration of what you're building. But that said, I'm kind of curious about that standard. And Thomas, maybe your thoughts about this. I mean, you've probably been in more headsets than any of us. How do you see this playing out over the next couple of years? You know, developers leveraging something like this, or do you see any contra opinion to this, like something that would counter why it shouldn't be a good thing?
No, of course it's a good thing. I also will mention this tomorrow in my news, and yeah, of course I tried a lot of different controllers also. We will talk about this later with this fold away stuff and all this stuff, and it would be really awesome if the developers could just use them for every platform and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think this is a really good thing, but I don't think that that the PlayStation VR will kick in there. So this will not happen, I think.
No, and I think, like you said, Zim, that you will still have exclusivity windows despite this open platform. You know, there'll still be Oculus willing to, or Sony willing to spend the big money saying, look, we want this game exclusively on our platform for 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll stop that.
And also, I think it's important to say that is kind of like okay. At this point in time, exclusivity is something that drives development, at this point at least, forward.
Yeah.
I see it that way.
Eventually we'll get to a point where we're at with consoles and PC right now, in that, you know, generally the games are released on all platforms, but some platforms will get an exclusive aspect of it, whether it be DLC earlier or, you know, a skin earlier or exclusive to that platform. I don't mind that at all, but obviously the VR is growing still, so we'll get there eventually, I'm sure. So yeah, that is OpenXR, very exciting and interesting, I think. So keep an eye on that in the future. But next up, let's talk to VoodooDE about his time at CES, because he had such an amazing time. I was super jealous, but I was watching it from the sidelines, you know, all your content that you're showing on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And is this the first time you've ever been to Las Vegas?
No, the 7th time.
Oh my
Holy
god!
Oh my
shit!
god! Yeah.
We got a high roller in the house.
So I was not impressed by the town, because I already know every hotel and every club there. So
Wow.
I'm a huge fan of the whole country. I've been there like 3 times a year in the US, so I know every part of this country.
Nice. So what was it your first time at CES?
Yes, that was my first time at CES. I was very impressed of the size of this exhibition. I've never seen this before. I went there and I had this plan, and I made a plan where I get and where I should go at which time, and this didn't work. This didn't work. It's so, there are, I think, like 8 halls or something, and they are so big. And I thought at the first hour I would totally get lost there, and this happened. So I had to download this app and go navigate there and stuff. So fortunately, the whole VR and AR stuff was nearly in one hall. So this was a very good thing. And some other companies like HTC had an own hotel room and stuff, and Oculus as well. So we had to walk a little bit, and after this week my feet were bleeding. That was so much walking. I've never experienced that before, but it was worth it. So I tried a lot. I've seen and tried a lot of stuff. Wow. that was really amazing.
You didn't get to try the Vive Cosmos though, because that was out of reach for everyone.
No, do not touch that. No, I've only seen it. I could photograph and take pictures from all sites, but I was not allowed to touch. So they put it on this head thing, and I was not allowed to even see the lenses and stuff.
So a bit like
there weren't even lenses inside there. I don't know.
A bit like other establishments in Las Vegas. You can look, but you can't touch.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, Mike, nice job.
Nice, yeah.
I find Voodoo's reaction is brilliant. He's like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Of course.
So what about the Vive Pro Eye? Did you get to check that out?
Yeah, I tried the Vive Pro Eye, and there were some experiences. I had the chance to try one of them. That was a baseball game, and what you could do is there was a menu like starting the game, 1 or 2 players and stuff, and you just had to look with your eyes. You don't have to turn your head. You just looked at the menu point, and then it was selected, and then you could go forward. But there was not a foveated rendering or stuff. Just control of the game.
Did you like that? With like, because it's not a very natural thing to do, because it's more natural actually to like do like very slight movements, but you don't really do like a lot.
That's right. That's because
like
I didn't really like it. I didn't see any sense of that. So I think the best thing of that will be the foveated rendering later. So
okay.
I don't know.
And you got to try out the Pimax eye tracking modules as well.
Yeah.
How do they sort of compare side by side?
There's not really difference. So they work both very exactly. So Pimax had a whack-a-mole experience. So you just stood there and have to look at the moles, just with your eyeballs, and it was really perfect, and it was very exact and accurate. So I was really impressed by that. However, the modules of the Pimax are a little bit big for now, that are prototypes, so it hurts a little bit here under the eyes. But I told them, and they will fix that. And
because I think the Pimax uses 7 Invensun eye tracking modules, whereas the Vive Pro Eye uses Tobii eye tracking. So there's a lot of difference in terms of the companies behind it. But talking while we're on the subject of Pimax, how did you find the 5K Plus Business Edition? Because obviously this uses OLED screens over LCD.
Yeah. Oh, that was the first time I tried this, and no, it was the second time. The first time was in Berlin at the Beckers meeting, and there was a prototype of the OLED version, but that was really bad because it had a lot of ghosting and stuff. Was really bad, and now they fixed that, and it was impressive. But there is a lot of screen door effect now. You can compare it between. I would say between the Vive and the Vive Pro. So this is not comparable with the other 2 Pimax headsets, with the 5K Plus and the 8K. So of course, when you play horror games and dark games, this looks amazing. This is more immersive. But when I played Beat Saber, the worst thing was when you lose a level, then there's a big red sign, level failed, I think. And when I looked at this, the screen door effect was so ultra bad, even worse than with the Rift.
Wow.
So I have no idea. I think that's because of the pentile matrix displays of the OLED. So they don't have the best displays panels there. I think.
So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people in the chat wanting to know this question. You know, maybe they're a backer of the Pimax like me, or they're interested in the Pimax headset. But out of the 3, you know, whether it be the Pimax 8K or the 5K Plus or the 5K Plus now Business Edition, which has the OLED, which one would you recommend as the one to go for?
It depends on what you want to do. So if you watch movies and want nearly no screen door effect, then I would go for the 8K. If you want to pay a little bit less and also have a good experience and wide field of view, I would go for the 5K Plus. And if you play mostly dark games like Elite Dangerous or Paranormal Activity and horror games, then I would go for the OLED version, I think.
Awesome. That's an excellent recap of those headsets. So of course you didn't even get to touch the Vive Cosmos, but you did get to try out what we think might be the reference design headset for.
That's right, from Acer and at the Qualcomm booth. And that was, to be honest, that was absolutely not impressive. Okay. So the problem was this was connected via the 5G network and was streamed. So we only had 60 hertz, and a very small field of view and legs and stuff. So I really was not impressed by that.
Yeah, and I have to say, like this week I tried a VR headset from Walmart that I imported from the US.
I've seen that video. That's
And that was the first time I'd ever tried a PCVR headset with 60 hertz, and it's very jarring. It's very jarring. It makes you almost feel motion sick. You know, it's a very strange sensation.
I had a Pimax related question because just yesterday I was kind of browsing, getting ready for my holiday to Canada, and I found at a local Walmart again a Pimax 4K headset. I'd never heard of this thing before.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
How does that compare? I'm just curious. I never heard it launch or anything. I know nothing about the 4K headset.
But it's an older one, huh?
Yeah, I figured it was going to be like, but where does it rank, like in terms of visual fidelity and?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's just
but I thought that was only for like watching movies more than.
That's right. I think it only has 3 degrees of freedom. It does not have a room scale, and I have to say I never did try the Pimax 4K. I don't have it at home. I think that's the only headset that's not in this.
Good, I got it right in the middle. But I'm really curious, like if you were rating headsets that consumers can buy today, like what are your top 5 in order? Kind of curious.
Top 5. Oh man, that's hard. To be honest, I'm a big fan of the big field of view of the Pimax. This is really, really impressive. So I got the Pimax now since very long time. I think July or something like that. And when I now go back to the Rift or the Vive, I can't stand that. It's so small. It's just like watching through a diver's mask or something like that.
So that is your go-to headset. If there is a VR game and you want to know how it works, that would be the first one that you would pick up.
Exactly, definitely. But wait, do we talk about headsets that are already available or?
Yeah, I was kind of coming.
Everything that I already tried.
Yeah, right now you've just said to everyone, you can't buy this one, but it's the one you want to get, which is infuriating. But
so you can't get the Pimax now. You can pre-order it, but for me it's the best one. That it's out in the near future. The very best one I've ever tried is the Star VR 1, of course, but we don't know what's happening with them.
Yeah, that's a real shame, actually, a real shame. But for those of you who are listening, or don't necessarily know Voodoo's background and why he had the Pimax so early, was because he was one of the original testers out of a group of people that were selected to test the Pimax before it was released to consumers, so they could give feedback internally. You did a great job there. By all accounts.
Yeah, and this year I will do the same with Xtal. So it's just starting again. Oh my god.
Yeah, you definitely got your work cut out for you, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, a lot of testing, and a lot of feedback, and but it's fun, of course.
Yeah, of course, very rewarding, and I'm sure we appreciate all your hard work, and I'm sure the community does as well.
I hope so.
So let's talk about the Qualcomm again, just quickly before we move on from that. You said you tried it over the 5G connection, which was limited to 60 hertz. Did you try it directly connected to a PC? Because obviously
that was not available on the booth.
That's a shame. Because obviously I think that's what everyone's most excited about the Cosmos is, or they want to tether it to a PC as their main function, and maybe the mobile function will only represent maybe 10 to 20% of their overall time with this headset. So it's a shame.
Did they mention a reason why that wasn't available? Because for me, that would seem like it isn't particularly on point.
No, that was only because Qualcomm wanted to show their 5G connection, and they didn't care about anything else.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. So what about the fold-away haptics? Because we touched on this, I think, on last week's episode, which was a haptic feedback, origami-style looking thumbstick, and you actually got to try it hands-on, right?
Yeah, but to be honest, if we talk about VR equipment, this was the most impressive thing I tried on the CES.
Wow.
Really,
nice.
Really. It's only for the thumb. But it feels so ultra immersive. There was a game that I need to squish animals. So there was a pig and I had to squish this animal, and it feels really as if you touch this animal. actually awesome. It looks
But that's
very ugly
exactly-
because this is a prototype thing, but wow, I've never felt something like this before.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That is what we said in the beginning as well. Like, if hand controls are done well, then it adds so much to that immersion. And I can't wait to get like a next generation of like controllers in my hands to play some games with, because I think that is really, if it's used, because I still don't think that a lot of the controls now, like for example, the Oculus has some cool controls as well, the Oculus Touch, and that is not being used in every game. But I'm looking forward to seeing more of that.
Yeah, and a lot of people that watched last week's show and were watching us talk about this fold-away haptics technology and the controller, they were getting really excited about this technology. So it's great to hear that you got to try it and it sort of lived up to the hype in a way, and it felt really great. Because
it really felt great, and also in contact with the developers, and I think they will send me one as soon as it supports some games.
Nice.
I'm just murmuring here under my voice, lucky bastard. But I'm really glad to hear the feedback, because having seen a concept like that, when you see it and you think of things like how strong is that going to be? Does it look like they're going to run into manufacturing trouble with it? But once you get your hands on something and you see a proof case like that, and for someone who's been through as much hardware as you have, to hear that kind of feedback, positively for that idea makes me very excited for the future, next couple of years. Can't wait to see that out.
Yeah, me as well. And I also had the chance to try the new Pimax controllers, and of course they feel good and stuff. But it was nothing better than the Knuckles controllers. It's just a cool controllers. It worked good, but it was not so ultra impressive.
Do they look as huge as?
They are
really
huge.
that big?
Yeah, they are really huge. But I tried some games, but surprisingly they didn't hit each other. So
right.
But I didn't try some games like Onward. I would like to try Onward, but at this time the second controller was broken. So
we did wonder why they weren't giving many demos out to people.
Yeah.
So in terms of other stuff you could try, did you also try the Odin VR headset?
Yeah, the Odin VR from Deus, with the Horus tracking system, as well. That was the worst thing I tried on the CES.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
I have absolutely no idea what they are aiming for. They told me they are B2B, but what the hell do I want with this headset? It's like the old Vive. It feels like the old Vive. It's LCD, and it's a very small field of view, and the tracking system is the same as a Lighthouse. I didn't see any difference there. And the problem is it will cost $1,500. So why on earth should I buy this, even as an VR arcade or whatever? I don't see any sense for that.
Yeah, it seemed like with Odin, their main business was selling to military, for military applications, for like drone pilot training and stuff like that. That seemed to be their business model. So maybe the consumer version isn't their 100% focus.
But they didn't have like some kind of hook. Like, what is their advantage, or is it like purely the service that they provide, or is it like do they also develop software? Or
no, the biggest advantage they told me is the Horus tracking system. So they have the base stations have a wider field of view, so there's a bigger area that you can cover with 2 sensors, but
they also
I think you can also do that with the Lighthouse system.
Exactly. With the Horus system, you could link infinite amounts of base stations for basically a world-scale VR experience. So and where that applies, and you kind of get the idea where they're really focused at military applications, is that if you have this big aircraft hangar, for example, you want to use for a training military exercise, you can have as many sensors as you need to cover the whole area and simulate the whole experience in VR. The thing is as well that
on like satellites like flying around the Earth. So
the other thing is that they're the only headset manufacturer in Russia. So if you're a Russian government and you don't want to trust anyone else, like the US, then you don't really have a choice. So that's probably where they got a lot of their money from.
I think so, yes. But for gamers, this is you can just forget about it. That's
interesting. Thank you for letting us know that. So what about any sort of AR tech, that you tried at the show?
No, there was a lot of AR. Holy shit, really? So in nearly every corner they had an augmented reality headset, and I tried to test them all. And the most impressive, I think, was the Realmex. What is it called? Kian, I think Kian. It has a 100-degree field of view, and this is very much for an augmented reality headset. And you can also switch it with a cover to a virtual reality headset, and this is really impressive. Yeah.
And what was that one called again?
It's called Realmex Kian. Kian.
Okay.
Q-I-A-N.
Q-I-A-N.
Yeah, I think that was the name. And it also has a Leap Motion integrated, and you can have room scale, and there was experience. We were in an aquarium, and we have to catch these fishes with our hands everywhere. Well, it was really impressive, and the display was very sharp, much better than Magic Leap or HoloLens.
Nice.
Nice. And then there was another one called Unreal Light. That was a little bit smaller. It looks like like this one, like a normal sunglasses, I think. And the field of view was a little bit smaller, like 60, but it has a very good tracking and display as well. So all of the AR headsets were really impressive from what the display belongs. And
but in terms of the application, like what were you doing with other than the headset and its ergonomics and the kind of form factor, what were you doing software wise that you could see as being a useful application? Because that's the part that I think I always struggle with AR.
That is the biggest, yes, exactly. That's the biggest problem. There are only demo apps. There's no big app that is supported. So this is a big problem. But also they mentioned that every of the headsets are developer edition. So you can. It makes no sense for a gamer to buy it now.
No.
What was the headset you were just showing there? They almost looked like the I think it's called Focals by North or something like that. What were the specs that you had? Are those just normal glasses, or were they actually?
They're the Bose ones, right? The ones that you were showing just now. The Bose frames.
The black.
Wait, that's the Bose frames, but this is not an augmented reality headset. This is only. I would call it the sunglasses with integrated speakers, nothing more. So they called it audio augmented reality, but this is, for me, this is fake news.
and that uses is it bone conductive technology?
No. It's just
Wait, put them on. Do they look cool?
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Do you see the speakers here?
I see. Yeah.
And I can. Wear it.
Wow.
Yeah. but this is, the problem here is that the sound is it's okay, the bass is bad, but everybody around you can hear what you are listening to, and this is bad.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. And that's why I think
Oculus Go managed to fix that.
Yeah, exactly. The Oculus Go is amazing. I still love the audio platform. For anyone who hasn't tried an Oculus Go, it literally feels like magic the first time you put it on, because at lower volumes, other people can't hear, but you can, and it sounds like it's great, like stereo audio. And then at louder volumes, it's actually kind of handy for other people to be able to hear. So it's lovely.
Yeah. Recently, I tried sunglasses that are similar to that had bone conductive technology built in, and that was very cool because no one else can hear it apart from you.
That's right. That's awesome.
And vibrations through your skull, which is really cool. But they were made by a company called Zungle, and it was a Kickstarter campaign, but the final product was a bit lacking when it finally came out. So I know they're working on a revision 2 of it, so hopefully that'll be better, but it's interesting to see Bose throwing their hat in the ring as well. But I think if you've got any questions in the chat for Voodoo about anything that you tried at CES, then put them in the chat now.
I already have a question from My Rift Kit. He's saying, what graphics card would the Pimax 5K Plus require? And when do you think they be sent out?
The pre-order, I think the pre-order starts in 4 days. At least they promised. So I would say graphics card, the 5K Plus. If you really want to have fun with that headset, I would definitely go a minimum for the 1080 Ti.
A minimum.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
Okay. And then we have Chris Richardson, who's asking VoodooDE, did you get a chance to try the Wooyer vest at the show?
That's the first time I hear this name. I have no idea. I tried the tech suit and the Tesla suit, but I have no idea what that is, to be honest. I didn't see that.
Maybe continue on that a little bit. Like, what do you think is the future of like tactical vests? Do you see a future for that in VR, or is it too early? Too early days now to actually see something good happening in the next coming.
So I think the Tesla suit needs some more years. This is not really finished, but the tech suit, Mike, you tried this as well when we were at Nazi. This is more. It's easier to implement. You just wear it, and you don't have to remove your clothes like with the Tesla suit. It just works pretty out of the box. So I was more impressed with the tech suit. I tried the new version, the developer kit number 3 at the CES, and that was really impressive, to be honest.
I think I might be having one soon as well. They're the ones from Haptics. Are those?
Yeah, they promised to send me one as well. I hope this will arrive soon.
so me and Thomas actually met in real life when we got to hang out at Nathy's together, and Nathy's got the Haptics vest there, and we were playing around with it and demoing it, and I never laughed so much watching Thomas put this thing on, because they've got this super weird experience, and I think I've mentioned it before on the show, but it's like a Japanese girl is touching you in different places, and it's super weird, like, you know, but you can feel it across your chest and your back, and it's just such a funny experience watching you react to that. It was hilarious.
Is there a video of that actually somewhere?
I hope not.
I don't think so. I think Voodoo put up some clips of that on his channel, but it doesn't show the video in its entirety. We all thought it was a bit strange, but it was a fun demo anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you've got any other questions, please chuck them in the chat now. But I just want to sort of recap. So your best of show at CES was the fold-away haptics haptic feedback controller.
Yeah. When we look at the VR equipment stuff, it was the most impressive thing for me. That's
really interesting to hear. That's really interesting to hear. And if you want to know more about the fold-away haptics, we talk about it for quite a bit on last week's episode. So go back and re-listen to that. But yeah, any other questions in the chat for Voodoo?
I haven't really noticed anyone immediately. Like, I got one person asking, was the food any good? Did you have any pizza?
Was the food any good? Yeah, I love the US food, but no, I'm 3 kilo heavier.
That's the point, actually. I forgot, because we hung out at Oculus Connect 5 as well in California, because we all went out for dinner together and we all had burgers and stuff at this
That's right.
In that greasy place where Mike, I think we even went back and had a milkshake there.
We did. We loved it. We went back. Yeah, we scooted back there. So let me recap the show times. So if you've got any last minute questions, now's the time. So just a reminder, it's a weekly VR, AR and MR talk show, live streamed every Saturday on YouTube, Facebook and Twitch. Tune into the show live at 7 p.m. in Europe, 6 p.m. in the UK, 12 midday in Central US. Or check out the audio version available on iTunes, SoundCloud and Anchor. If you do like the show, then please leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. And yeah, now's the last time to sort of answer any questions for Voodoo before we say goodbye.
We have Vivian asking, what is the next event that you're going to, Thomas?
Oh, I have no idea. I want to stay at home for some days. No, no, I will visit some VR arcades in Germany, and they wanted me to do a visit there and show some stuff, and perhaps but I don't know the next event. I would go to the MWC, but I have no time there, so I'm sorry, I cannot.
Well, hopefully we'll meet up with you at a show in the future so we can hang out again. It's always cool to hang out with you. And thanks again for joining us on this episode of the show. We really appreciate you having you here and answering a lot of questions about the stuff that you tried at CES. I think we have run on a little bit later than usual, but I thought, as we've got you here, it's a perfect opportunity to ask you a lot of questions. So I hope you guys and girls understand that. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please leave your likes and thumbs up for Voodoo in the chat for being a part of it. We'll be back next week, of course, with the freshest VR news and information from the industry. So until then, have a great week in VR And bye-bye for now from all of us here at the FReality Podcast. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.